area on Long Island where these bodies were found, although it's only an hour or an hour and a half's drive from Manhattan, is an isolated and windswept spit of land with water on both sides of it. It's the sort of place, macabre as it is to point out, that if you had a mind to dump a body, this would be the place to do it. And at night, it's pitch black. So you can imagine that the mind races, given that there is a serial killer, or perhaps serial killers on the loose, and all these bodies were dumped in this rather remote area of Long Island. Most of the victims in these cases have been sex workers, underlying just how dangerous it is to work in this industry in the United States. An estimated 130 female sex workers are murdered each year. And now we have the phenomenon of the internet being used to procure or advertise sexual services. The mother of the sex worker who disappeared and whose disappearance sparked this whole search, which unearthed the 10 sets of human remains, she has been waiting for a year now for word of her daughter, Shannon Gilbert. She just doesn't know when she's going to get any news, whether the news will be that her daughter is among those who have been murdered, or in fact, whether she's alive somewhere. The United States is a nation fascinated by crime, but you'd have to say that the Americans have latched onto this subject with a great deal of enthusiasm and relish. A lot of the crime experts I spoke to seem to think the public's fascination with all this stems from the fact that whereas most murders are crimes of passion or wanton acts, serial killers kill simply because they enjoy it, and it's very premeditated. Pete Hamill is a New York legend. There are many New York legends I know, but he is really one of the greats in journalism. He's been writing eloquently about the city for 50 years. So we've turned to him in this piece as a sort of oracle on crime and the coverage of it in the popular media. Retired Sergeant Detective Joe Coffey is what you'd call an old-school New York cop. He was born and raised in the city of Irish heritage. He's tough, he's gruff, and he certainly doesn't mince his words. Coffey was one of the leading detectives in the Son of Sam serial killer case in the 1970s, and someone who thinks these cases out in Long Island are going to be very hard to solve. One of the things that the police say is that crime dramas on TV have raised public expectations impossibly high about how quickly crimes can actually be solved. The public now expects crimes to be solved in prime time, in the course of a one-hour show rather than in real time. The reality is that police work is slow, it's painstaking and methodical, and not nearly as dramatic as it's portrayed on TV. Obviously, the law enforcement personnel are trying very hard to solve this case as soon as possible. But I guess what you have to remember about the United States is it's a huge country, more than 300 million people. So the numbers when it comes to crime are much larger than in a small country like Australia. So I think while people are hoping that something like this doesn't happen again, it's the sort of thing that people expect will happen again, unfortunately.